having a conversation earlier, which is how do you ensure that your employer, for instance, is recognizing your value? To Bonito's point, which is there are other things that you can do outside of your direct assignment. Maybe looking for external ways to ensure that your boss is seeing that there's more to you than just the spreadsheets that you fill out every day or the reports that you write at the end of your shift, right? And sharing that when they ask you about your weekend, say, hey, you know what? I actually had an amazing time. I was in Baltimore. I came to this Congress, and these are some of the things that we talked about. Your boss is gonna be like, wow, this kid, wow, he's thinking big. You know, we got to keep this guy, right? And then make sure as well that you're, you know, as you try to portray these things, you're selling to the right people. That's important because sometimes it may not be just the immediate person you're working with that needs to know that you're doing a good job. Because if that person, for instance, has a limited view of your value, it may be necessary to get 2 or 3 other people who can equally advocate for you and appreciate that. So that's very important.
One of the mission statements of my company is servant leadership. So my bosses and all our executives know my involvement with the CPS. And so guess what? Once one department meeting, it was about the CPS, recognizing that servant leadership. Guess what? Before I was coming here, my boss said, make sure you bring me the brochure. I always want to have it. I always enjoy reading it. So don't be afraid or ashamed to talk about what you are doing to be a leader beyond even the corporate environment, because leadership is leadership.
Don't be afraid to talk about everything else that you are. Obviously, there's an element here where you almost have to bring your whole self to work in order to be authentic, because sometimes I think we have a tendency to sort of check out ourselves at the door when we walk into the office. So if there's some of these great qualities that you have, probably step back and say, okay, where is it in my group at work that this could be beneficial? And how can you make sure that you're shining in those ways that are bringing value to your organization? So then you stop being perceived as simply someone who's there to take. You're equally giving. And we all know it's in giving that you receive, right? So that's huge. But then take your booklets as well. Go share it and say, hey, you know, this is, I just thought it might be of interest to you. Take a look at this. Let me know your thoughts, you know. Pass it around.
What I can say here is, in regard to that, I'll go a different way. I would say don't play the race card. I know a lot of you, you know, when you get into a corporate office and something happens to you, the first thing you say, oh, they did this to me because I'm African or because I'm black. It doesn't matter, you're still black anyway. So don't play the race card first. Try to analyze things beyond the race card issue. And the second point I would say, always make your boss look good first. I don't know if you watched this movie called Something the Lord Has Made. And the whole thing happened at Johns Hopkins, and there was this lab technician who was actually a heart surgery pioneer with Dr. Blaylock. And guess what? The guy did all the job. He's the one who did the first surgery on dogs. He's the one who was there directing his boss on how to do the blue baby surgery. He never complained. He was always there on time. He did all the work in the background. Guess who got the honors? The boss. He got all the medals, all the money, everything possible. But the guy continued to work hard. And guess what? After 40 years, his own time came in 1976 when his own product, his own students recognized, all the surgeons in America recognized his contribution, and they gave a wonderful painting to him, and he was given a doctorate honoris causa. And today he has a movie that was portrayed based on his life when Dr. Blaylock didn't even have a movie on his life. So it means that whether people recognize your value today or not, if you are meant to shine, you're going to shine. Just continue working hard. And please, forget about looking black. You're still black anyway.
My question goes to Dr. Enangana, talking about alumni groups. I just wanted to add to what my brother said. So Cameroon is bilingual, and fixing English Cameroon doesn't fix the whole of Cameroon. So, do we know about French alumni? Do they have an alumni, or how strong are their associations to step back to go deep into the root and raise the new and upcoming generation the way we want our generation to look like?
If you notice very well, in our times, the French-speaking Cameroonians did not go to one school. They always move from school to schools. So, no, most of the time. So one person will attend like 4 different schools before they graduate. So, that's one, and I was talking to them, and they said that's the reason why most of them don't really have an alumni. Whereas in the English-speaking sector, you sit on one school for 5 years, and you go through to the end. You don't jump from school to school, school to school. The only time you join when they dismiss you. And those are like 1% of the time. So we are using the English model as the model. But it could be changed, it depends. But it's a platform that works. So if the wheel is moving, why change the wheel? So we use that platform because it works. And so we model it to Harvard. It's a model that works, so let's work with that model. But if you have new things to add, we can add on the model and improve it, but it's a model. So they don't have alumni, and that's one of the reasons they move from school to schools.
I was in, we call it Collège Sacré-Cœur for 7 years. So I can speak on behalf of that. It was an elite school, just like in the English-speaking part of the country. But the difference is, and even within the politics of the Catholic Church, the Canadian did such a good job, unfortunately, that when some of our priests, started taking power over the mission, the foreign missionaries, instead of focusing on the output, they focused on who was controlling the money. They thought that if we control those schools, we're going to control the money, and that was their basic mistake. So what they did is they sent the Canadians away, the Canadians were actually the ones who were controlling most of the private, whether you go to Liberman or Vogt or Collège de la Retraite or Mazenot, most of the missionary schools in French Cameroon. So they basically kicked all the guys out and did not provide a replacement in terms of management that was up to par. They started tribalizing the issue, basically appointing people without the necessary qualities to take over some of those schools. And that's how some of them crumbled. Because in the French-speaking Cameroon, those schools were highly subsidized by Canadians. Canadians used their own personal networks to bring so many stuff into those schools that the locals could not provide. And once they left, the schools tumbled. The only schools that were left out that were still in the control of the foreign missionaries were the Jesuit schools, which was Liberman and then Vogt in Yaoundé. The only order that they allowed to still have control after 1985 was the Jesuit. And if you look at the best schools today in the French-speaking Cameroon, they are still Liberman and they are still Collège Vogt because there is a degree of involvement of the Jesuit in that environment. Now, regarding the alumni, there's really no French tradition in terms of alumni. But even when it could exist, the issue was killed by politics. Because at the end of the day, people did not see the benefit of belonging to an alumni in order to get a job, since they could easily go and wear the CPDM uniform or go into Freemasonry or Rosicrucian order. Why go take a shortcut when you have the highway in front of you? So a lot of them just went into politics. And that's what basically destroyed any hope for building strong alumni. And you still see that till today.